Welcome to the Gaylord Specialty Healthcare Podcast. This podcast will feature patients, families, and medical professionals dealing with serious illnesses or injuries and is meant to inspire, bring hope, insight, and a message of belief that life after a traumatic illness is possible. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Gaylord Specialty Healthcare Podcast featuring our ThinkFirst series. Today, we're going to talk a lot about concussions and the effects that concussions have on our youth and people in our community. There was an article in the Quinnipiac Chronicle, actually from Quinnipiac University, back in February of 2022 that states, "I wish I never played hockey." One of the former QU men's hockey players reveals life-threatening effects of intoxicating smash mouth culture, they call it, that has left him searching for answers. This gentleman played hard hockey throughout his career, and then he coached it, and he continued to preach that hard hockey feel. And now he's suffering from changes in his behavior, his emotion, his mental status. He has a lot of pain. He suffered with alcohol addiction. And these are some of the things that can happen after repeated blows to the head. Now, he's saying it could be something like CTE, but that only really is diagnosed when someone has passed away. But he seems to be living with these severe chronic issues of changes in his brain that affect his family life, the way that he emotionally reacts to certain situations, and sort of, can be a hard problem in a marriage and dealing with children and things like that. It carries over to all those things. So concussions after concussions can lead to some of these chronic issues. And today I actually brought in a high schooler, Mr. Matthew Solomon here from Taft School, who's here to tell us a little bit about how concussions have affected his life and playing some of these high school sports and how that has changed him and made his career decisions and life decisions altered by the impact of concussions. Mm-hmm. So Matthew, welcome to our ThinkFirst series.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you and kind of explain my story and talk to everyone else out there about, concussions and all that.
Yeah, it's very important that you share this, because I know in high school, it's like you want to fit in, you want to be part of sports is such a huge part of growing up. And I want you to start off maybe by telling us a little bit about how old you are, what grade you're in, where you're from, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I am 17 years old. I'm a junior at the Taft School in Watertown, Connecticut. I grew up in New York City. I went to preschool there, went through elementary school, up until 8th grade. I did 9th grade at my school because it went K through 9. And then I reclassed to the class of 2023 at Taft because I was the youngest at my old school in my grade. So I kind of wanted to be a little older, especially because at boarding school, there's a lot more reclasses. Everyone's older because sports is such a dominating factor, as we're going to talk about in a little bit. So it's my 3rd year there. I came as a freshman, and it's been really great. The concussions have limited the experience a little bit, like we'll talk about, but I think overall I've really enjoyed it, and it's been great for me.
Is there a reason that you chose the boarding school over a regular high school?
Mm-hmm. At my old school, about half the kids in the graduating grades went to boarding schools, and half went to day schools, either in the city or in other places. And my uncle went to Taft, so I already had a connection previously to the whole application period, but Taft really stood out with me. I loved the campus feel. I loved the students' positivity when I came there. When I was going out my tour guide, everyone was saying, happy birthday. And that's kind of a thing where you make the people attending the tour feel bad. It's like, oh, it's your birthday? Happy birthday, where it's not actually your birthday.
Okay.
But, that's kind of a joke with tour guiding.
Like an initiation type thing.
Yeah. No, that really stood out to me. And I loved my interview. I interviewed with the football coach. He's also in the admissions office. It was great. I really enjoyed it, and I just felt like I could fit in. So when I got the letter for admissions, I was super excited. I didn't even look at any other admissions. I just told school, "Hey, I'm coming. Be ready."
Oh, so awesome.
It was kind of a fit from day one, and it was tough transitioning, but I think once I got past that little hump in the beginning, it's been great.
And initially you went on to the football team, like right when you got there?
Yeah, so I was planning to play football there. I joined as a freshman right away. I was definitely the smallest on the team. I was probably 5'8", 130 pounds, where there were kids who were like 6'5", 300 pounds. Big team. My school sends kids to play college football every year. There's big kids there. They bring in lots of recruits. So I felt, kind of out of it. I didn't really feel big enough, strong enough, fast enough. And I just felt kind of, upset because I felt like coming in, I had high hopes. I wanted to get some good playing time, maybe start. And once I came, I was like, oh, this is not going to happen at all.
It was a big football school.
Yeah, it was a big jump. It's a big team. And I was kind of down at the beginning, but, I stuck with it. Freshman year, I played on JV, and we only had like 3 games, which they were great. But, obviously I wish I had more. And on the last JV game of the season, this was the week before the big like varsity rivalry game against our rival school, Hotchkiss. I got my first diagnosed concussion. So that's where it really all started. I couldn't go to the rivalry game. I had to watch at home, which really sucked. And it really, really hurt. That was the first time I really felt the effects of it. And it sucked, to put it simply.
Yeah, you couldn't be with your team.
No, I couldn't.
What is a concussion? How did you know that you had it, or who pointed that out for you?
Yeah, so the way I got it, it's kind of a funny story. I was going to block a punt, and the way I got the concussion was instead of the punt hitting my hands, it hit my head. So it's a really interesting way to block a punt. So it worked.
It stopped it, right?
It stopped it. We got the ball, but I played the rest of the game. I didn't really feel any effects. I mean, for about 10 seconds, I felt kind of dazed. But I think the adrenaline just kept me going. And then after the game, I was feeling, nauseous and had a big headache and tired and just all that. And I wasn't feeling great. So my friends had me go to the health center there, and they diagnosed me with a concussion pretty much right away. So the biggest effects I had were just, nausea, dizziness. I couldn't really think straight. I had some like clouds in my eyes. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't too bad, but there were definitely some effects there. And it took me a few days to kind of get back in the swing of things. And I had to just sit in a dark room with nothing, like no music, no screens. You're like, when you have a concussion, you just have to, they say, like, rest your brain.
Yeah. Which
is really hard to do. Like, you use your brain for everything. Talking right now, I'm using my brain. Just looking around the room, I'm using my brain. Everything uses your brain. So to have someone tell me I just have to sit there and do nothing for 2 days, it was really boring and annoying, and I didn't want to have to do it again. So
they didn't let you go to classes or anything?
No classes, no work. Yeah. When I was telling them, like, hey, I feel better, they're like, no, you got to stay in there. It takes longer than you think. So, after a day or two, I felt pretty much okay. And then, it still took a few days to kind of get reacclimated into it. My first days back in class were just me sitting with my head down, listening, because they want you to kind of go slowly into it.
Yeah.
And so I missed about a week of school just from one little concussion. And they called it a mild concussion, so it wasn't too severe, wasn't too light, but still, it took me about a week to recover from it, which might not seem like too long, but in school, when you're going, quickly every day, you're learning and learning 5 classes each day, it builds up, and then you have to recover from it. And it just takes a while, and it's not the best thing to do.
Yeah. And so for our listeners too, we just want to explain what a concussion is a little bit. It's actually a mild traumatic brain injury. It's literally any bump, blow, jolt to the head that results in some kind of those symptoms that you experienced. And it's scary because you can't see inside your brain. So you don't know if there's a little bleed or what kind of impact that blow had to your head. And like you said, it actually did take a few days for you to feel normal again and then return to activity.
Yeah. And what's also crazy is that it doesn't have to be a direct contact to your head. It can be what's called, I remember another concussion I got later was a whiplash concussion, where I was hit like a little below my neck, kind of in my chest, and my head was kind of thrust back. And I didn't even have contact with my head. I thought at the beginning it wasn't a concussion because I didn't even hit my head on anything. But the head is, the brain is it's so easy to hurt or injure, and it's so hard to take care of it that you just have to, you really got to go out of your way to keep it safe, especially if you're playing a contact sport like football or hockey or lacrosse or something like that. Because, even these helmets now that are, approved by, big time corporations are like, oh, they're going to protect you and they're going to help you. They can't stop everything. And it still happens no matter what. And I feel like it's going to keep happening. So I just want people to be aware of that because it's very common and kids try to hide it. I tried to hide my last one because I didn't want to stop playing.
Right.
I was nervous. I didn't want to I don't want to tell my parents I had another one, and I wanted to hide it. And that's probably the worst thing you can do because these are serious. And I realized that after. So
yeah, there's many studies. I mean, there's so many kids that they don't go counted because they don't report them.
yeah,
They want to keep playing for sure. You're not alone, and that's great that you're actually telling people this because we need more people to report it. These are long-standing things that can stay with you. And so you said you had even more, right? You had a second one, the whiplash one, and then what was the last one?
Yeah, so when I was little, this it didn't go documented because my parents. This is before I really started playing tackle football, so we weren't really worried about concussions. But I had my friend up to my house, and we were just throwing a football around. And he was bigger than me. He was almost twice my size because, like I said, I was smaller when I was younger. So he had a big arm. He was strong, and he was throwing me the football from like 5 feet away. I'm not sure why he was so close. And he threw it harder than I guess he intended to. And because it was 5 feet away, I didn't really have a chance to catch it. And it hit me right between the eyes. Like I said, I didn't go to a doctor, but that night I was, head was in serious pain. I was crying. I was probably in 4th grade. So it was a while ago, but, it hurt like crazy and I was dizzy and I don't remember it too well because it was a little while ago. I just remember I couldn't really sleep that night. And for the next couple of days, it was hurting like crazy. So I kind of assumed that was one, even though it wasn't exactly diagnosed. And then sophomore year, I was very close to having one. I went in for a tackle and I'm not really sure what happened. I kind of hit the guy and I tried not, obviously when you tackle, you're not supposed to lead with your head. I tried to get my head out of it, but when I hit him, I couldn't really grab him. I kind of fell down. My head was just ringing. So I went to the health center. They said, fortunately, I didn't have one, but I was really, really close. And then last year I was in practice, like I said, with the whiplash. We were in a drill and I got hit in the chest by someone else and my head flung back and my head was hurting for the rest of the practice. So I went to go sit down and I tried not to, I tried to just walk it off. I went to go sit in my room and it took the dorm parent on my floor to be like, hey, you have to go to the health center. I know something's wrong. And I was nervous. I was scared. I was upset. And I didn't want to have to tell my parents because I knew it was a concussion. I didn't want to have to tell them. And, once you go and they diagnose you, they tell your parents, even if I don't. So they were going to find out. And when they let me call my mom for the first time, she was, I could tell she was upset. She was trying to stay calm because she wanted me to be okay, but she was really upset. And I knew my dad was going to feel the same because he had a few concussions when he was growing up. And he dealt with it. He played soccer. He dealt with injuries a few times, so he knows what it's like. So they were really nervous about it, and I really wanted to just, I don't know, I didn't want to quit, but I didn't want to have to tell them that I was dealing with these concussions left and right. So it was kind of nuts.
So who initially broached the subject about actually quitting football?
Yeah, I knew that it was going to be a topic of discussion because I knew last year after I almost had one, my mom and dad told me, look, you can keep going, but we're nervous. And once you get another one, we're going to have to talk about it. So I was really nervous when I had to go home and talk to them about it. It took me a couple of days of just, because I have to recover from it. I just have to sit there and I had to think about talking to them. And that was even worse, I think. It was like 2 to 3 days of just thinking of all the scenarios of what's going to happen, thinking about what I'm going to say, what they're going to say, how they're going to react, I'm going to react. And I didn't really know. There were millions of things going through my head when I'm not supposed to be thinking of anything. So once I felt okay and we sat down at the dining room table and, I forget how it was initiated, but I felt, really upset and they saw I was upset and they were like, look, we don't want to do this, but we think you should maybe take a break. And I, was upset. I didn't say yes right away, but I think after thinking about it and, talking with some of my coaches and my friends and teammates that, it was the right decision. So it wasn't that they made me, and it wasn't that I wanted to do so right away. It was kind of a combination. I realized that it'd be better for me in the future. I know like CTE and dementia are causes of even more severe concussions. And I didn't want it to get to that point. My mom's dad has dementia, so it's been pretty tough on my grandma and my mom just to kind of deal with that because, he was like perfectly fine a couple years ago, and he still is physically healthy. It's just the dementia makes it very tough. So we know how tough it is firsthand, and I didn't want to get it. I didn't want it to get to that point ever. And I knew that, my family would be hurt by it, and it would, hurt them physically and mentally. So,
Right.
Mhm.
For you to have the wisdom at this age to know that too, and to think about how your parents would react, and looking down the road at your life, that's really admirable.
Yeah, my parents and my coaches in high school and also in middle school, they did a very good job of explaining, what a concussion was, what what can happen if you get one, what the consequences are.
Like, were you educated in school about it too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my middle school did a very good job talking about it. Even at a young age, when I started playing football, they always would read to us like very seriously what a concussion was, what the consequences were, why it could happen, how it happens. So I knew about it early on, and I stayed healthy in middle school. I don't think I ever got a real injury, didn't get a concussion, didn't break any bones or anything. So I felt pretty good going into high school. I thought I was kind of invincible. Not invincible, but you know what I mean. I felt pretty good. I mean, most kids had broken something or torn something or gotten a concussion, and I hadn't. So I felt good about myself. And, the first football season, I got my first diagnosed concussion. So I was like, all right, it's a setback. It's nothing huge. And then I was, pretty close to getting another one the next season. It's like, all right, I got to realize what's going on. Then I got a third one. If this is going to happen every year, I got to stop. So,
yeah. Was your coach supportive?
Yeah, absolutely. My head coach and the other assistant coaches are very, very great. And the great thing about my school is that my coaches are also teachers or admissions officers. So they work at the school. So they're not just my coach. They're, advisors, they're friends. They're, like kind of like parents. Like they're all there for me. So that was really nice of them. And I really appreciate it. So they made sure that I was going to be okay. They made sure that they cared for me and that they'd be there for me. So they made sure that no matter what my decision was, they'd be there. They wouldn't tell me what to do because they wanted it to be my decision, but they offered advice saying, look, it sucks. It happens. So, ultimately it's up to you, but look out for your health. So I did that. I looked out for my health, and I ended up stopping.
Yeah, that's amazing for a coach and people that you really respect to tell you that, because I'm sure there's some people out there who have hot-headed coaches who are like pushing you to get back on the field and, oh, you're fine, that kind of thing, which used to be one of the bigger mentalities. And obviously the culture has changed, which is wonderful. But it also shows too, you explained like how early education on this subject can really make a difference. You said you learned it back in middle school. So as you were approaching high school and getting into these contact sports, all that knowledge was like, oh, these really bad things can happen. And here I am faced with it.
Yeah, I'm very thankful for that. They did a great job. I'm very happy. And once I came back for a reunion once, and I had to tell my old coaches what happened, and they, obviously were upset, but I told them that like, hey, you guys were the ones that helped me out here. If not for you, I might have kept going and might have hurt myself even more, which would have been permanent. So, I'm very thankful for that. And I think everyone should have the ability to learn that at as young age as possible, because it doesn't matter the sport. It doesn't even matter if it is a sport. You can get a concussion any way possible. So I think everyone should know what it is, why it's so serious, why it's different from any other part of your body, how to prevent it and how to get past it.
Yeah, that's one of the awesome things about Think First, right?
Absolutely.
That's exactly what we want to do, educate our youth about injury prevention. So then, what have you done to stay connected to the team since? Are you involved? It was like cut it off cold turkey?
Yeah, so the season ran from September to about November, Thanksgiving time. So after it happened, it was very early in the season. It was like only the third week into it. We'd only played one game. So the rest of the season was left, and I wasn't really sure what to do. I came up to my coach with ideas, and he told me he'd be glad to welcome me back, whether it was as a player or not. But I told him, I might take a break from being a player for now. And he offered to let me stay. He knew how passionate I was about football, not even just playing it, just kind of studying it and coaching it and learning about it. So he offered to let me stay as kind of an assistant coach, help out with like the freshmen on the JV team, and also to help out with like keeping statistics from the team. So like tracking the stats of the players from each game, tracking the game stats, what would help the team, what doesn't help the team, which I thought was really cool. That's kind of what I want to do when I'm older.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had like career goals to be a football player or like where your mind was as a freshman going in.
Yeah, obviously, growing up, the dream is to, play in the NFL, be a superstar, be, a Hall of Famer, all that. And then I realized, that's extremely hard to do. So I might tone it down a little. But, once this all happened, I realized that, playing football doesn't last forever. And if I wanted to stay connected, I had to find other ways to do it. So I kind of researched more into like coaching and management styles. I'm a big Giants fan and they haven't done that great. So I always come up with ways to kind of fix the team myself because I feel like I would do it better. But
maybe they'll hire you on one day.
That's the goal. Yeah, no, I want to work in the NFL. I want to be either a coach or work as a general manager or a scout or something like that. I love scouting. I love coaching. I like tracking the numbers, as I mentioned. So I think all of that is really awesome. So if I had to say what I want to do when I'm older, it's just find a way to stay connected and work in the NFL. That would be great.
So it's very unique because, you weren't just a high school athlete. You actually do want to move towards like the NFL and college football and all that
absolutely.
kind of stuff. So this was a huge decision for you to make to actually quit playing.
Yeah. And I think another reason why it helped was, obviously the keeping my head safe, but also like it helped me to move away from playing and kind of transition into what I want to do when I'm older. And I feel like, it's kind of hard to figure out what you want to do, but I'm pretty sure I know what I want to do. So I think now that I know, and I'm still pretty young, I'm a junior in high school, but I think now that I know, I can kind of work towards it. And, they don't teach like sports management in high school. It's more of a college thing. So it's kind of hard for me to do it like in school. But, when I have free time, I'll watch a YouTube video and I'll just learn. I got some pretty great advice from a former NFL GM saying, at your age, just like pretend you're like a sponge, just like soak in all the information as possible. And I've kind of lived by that. I like, watching videos, reading books, reading articles, stuff like that. Anything related to football, really.
Sounds like you use your brain.
Yeah. I mean, that's, like we said, the brain's important. You got to use it for this stuff. So,
keeping it protected.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I love that you're trying to come on board with ThinkFirst and be a part of our program as well and go out and serve the community and tell your story and try to make a change, be that advocate for people who are probably on concussion number 2, 3 as well and sort of want to keep playing hard. And you got to promote that. It's not all about that. It's about being smart, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
What made you want to do more with your story?
Yeah, I saw that, like you said, a lot of kids don't have this information available to them, and it's kind of looked over because, breaking a bone or tearing a ligament is more painful, and I feel like we sometimes associate pain with severity, and a concussion might not be that painful right away. Like I said, it took me a few days or a week to get over mine, and that's kind of it. And once they're early on, they don't really last that long. The more you have, I think the easier they are to get, and the more severe they can be. So, I think kids don't really realize that concussions are a very severe injury to have, even though it might not seem like it. And I want kids to know that because when I would tell kids why, I tell my friends and classmates and other people why I stopped, they'd be like, oh, you only have 3 concussions? That's not that many. I'm like,
which is scary to hear.
It's like, look, it might not seem like that much, but it's a lot and it can really hurt you for a long time, for the rest of your life. So I feel like a lot of people don't know that, even in, my school, which is a very good school. I'm very proud of where I am, but some people don't understand how severe it is. And I feel like there are so many kids now that are just, looking over it because of, a coach or a parent or a family member that just wants them to keep going and kind of ignore it. And I think everyone should know, the implications of what a concussion is and what it can do to you. Yeah.
And what made you come across ThinkFirst? How did you find us, basically? Because you sought me out, which is awesome.
Yeah. When I had that concussion, I was down for a while. I was really, upset, really angry at myself, at, my teammates, at everybody. And, I was kind of struggling in school for a little. My mom wanted to get me, up again. And so she kind of sought out, things like ThinkFirst. She found ThinkFirst and she mentioned you to me, and I was like, well, I might as well reach out. I mean, I might, try to help kids. If I can't do anything anymore, I might try to help others that still can do it. And every time I do that, I look at my brother, for example, he wants to play now. He said, carry on the tradition. I'm like, Jeff, I've played for like 5 years. It hasn't been that long, but
tradition. How old is he?
He's 14. He's a freshman.
All right.
Obviously I'm a little nervous for him. My mom's very nervous. She doesn't want him to, but he somehow convinced her. So, I'm happy he did. I'm happy he gets a shot.
Your poor parents.
Yeah. But, I look at him for motivation. I mean, usually I feel like the younger brother looking at the older brother for something, but I'm looking at him. I mean, he's a really awesome kid and he wants to learn and he wants to play. So I look at him and I know there are so many others like him that want to play, but they also, if they're playing, that's great, but they also got to know what can happen. And so they have to know, about the concussions, about everything else. But it's very important they know.
What we teach too is that we're not saying don't play sports. We're just saying be smart about playing sports. Know your sport, know what equipment is best for you, know how to handle yourself on the field. And if something happens, report it. Don't hide it. Reach out to your coaches, your parents. Because like you said, it's not just a head injury. It's a lifelong injury, and can be sustained through all those symptoms you talked about, which is really scary. So what do you think you'd say to a high school football player, maybe even a middle schooler, who has to make that similar decision that you've had to make?
Wow, that's a big question. Obviously it's a very tough discussion to have, being the person to say, look, it might be smart to stop for at least a little or forever, especially if that sport or activity means something like football did to me. It meant everything to me. And, having someone tell me I should stop was like, all right, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to listen to you. And that makes sense. I mean, I understand why someone would feel like that. I felt like that. But I feel like, once you look at it from, the concussion perspective and how much it can do to you. And if you see what it does to you, like you see in the NFL, these people get CTE and they do terrible things to themselves. It's like, look, do you really want to do this to yourself? Like, for a few years of a sport. And I know it's great, but it can do things to you for the rest of your life. And it's just not worth it. You can do other things. You can protect your brain doing other activities. And it's a really tough thing to say, but if it's worth it in the long run, then it's worth it in the short run as well.
That's excellent advice. And I know you're not a parent yet, but if there's parents out there listening to this as well, what kind of things would you say to the parent who's trying to help their child make this decision of, do I continue on with these sports despite concussions? How do I help my child see the risks of this? Yeah,
I think the biggest thing is just honesty. I think you got to be, straight up with them and say, look, it's a terrible thing that concussions are such an awful thing that can happen, but it's just what it is. So I think, showing your child like pieces of evidence, articles, videos, stuff about, maybe their favorite players that are getting these concussions and seeing what it does to them. I mean, I think a real life example, as much as it might sound pretty awful, I think it's just how it works. I think you have to show them what it can do and, what the risks are and how it might be helpful to just, maybe take a break or change what you're doing. So I
love that advice to watch videos too and see things. I always reference in my school presentations the movie Concussions with Will Smith.
Yeah.
Like that is a true depiction of how multiple head traumas can impact your life for sure. So those are very powerful messages. Thank you, Matthew.
Of course.
Yeah, we and you can find more information too on concussions and ways to prevent it at thinkfirst.org. Or you can look on the Gaylord website and search ThinkFirst, and we have posted some things about concussion prevention as well. So thank you so much again for coming in.
Of course, thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff. As much as it hurts sometimes, it's good for everyone else to know.
Oh, absolutely. This is the best way to share information to get it out there. All right. Well, thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for tuning into the Gaylord Specialty Healthcare Podcast. We hope that you will join us again to hear more stories that bring hope, insight, and a message of belief that life after a traumatic injury or illness is possible.